Okay, so this is our number talk for December 18th through the 20th. And for Monday, we have 4 problems that we're going to be solving, and they all involve fractions or even decimals. So what I thought I would do is if I would talk you through some of these so that you have a better understanding, and hopefully by the time we get done with this, you will have 4 really good answers and be able to think in multiple ways when solving these types of problems. So the first problem says Giselle purchased a 5-pound bag of flour. If she used 1.5 pounds to make bread and 1 3/4 pounds to bake a cake, how many pounds of flour does she have left? Alright, so what I read was that she has a bag of flour. So this is my 5-pound bag. She's going to use 1.5 pounds for some bread, and then she's going to use 1 3/4 to make a cake. So anytime you use something, what's happening is it's going away, but you started with this amount. So there's a couple things I want to point out here. I know some of you are probably thinking, well, we want to find this question mark. So what we could do is we could take 5 and we could subtract this and subtract this, and we would be left with that question mark, which is perfectly fine. You can do that. But I want to extend your thinking. Think about GMA. Think about the order. So if you think about GMA and using order, what could you do? Well, what we know is we have these 2 pieces that we could put together first. And if we wanted to put these 2 pieces together first, oops, I wrote the wrong number, 1 3/4. What I could do is put them in parentheses. And since we know that's going to be taken away from the number 5, we can do this. We ought to be able to get our answer. And another thing I want to mention is because we know a decimal equivalent for half, and we also know the decimal equivalent for 3/4, we could set this up using decimals if you're comfortable doing that. But setting it up in this way and solving will help you get the answer. Okay? Alright, moving on to the next one. We're going to find the difference in 2 1/3 and the fraction 5/6. So again, what we're going to need to do is find some common denominators. And if I think quickly, I know that I can double 3 and get to 6. Don't forget that if you double the denominator, you must also double the top number. So then that creates 2 2/6 minus 5/6. Okay, and boys and girls, by rewriting it every time, it really helps us start thinking about the steps that are needed. So when I look at this, I cannot take away 5 if I only have 2. So I'm going to need to rename this. So remember, we're going to cross out the 1. And another name for 2 is, we're going to cross out the 2. And another name for 2 is 1 6/6. And we can't just throw away the 2 6. So we're going to put those together. And then we end up having 1 8/6 minus 5/6. And once we do that, we can subtract, and we're able to get 1 3/6. Well, the one thing I want to ask myself is the lowest name 3/6? Well, can I take my numerator and count to my denominator? If I can do that, then I know that I need to divide by the top number by 3 and divide the bottom number by 3. And then I will get 1 1/2. 1 1/2 is your final answer. Alright, moving on to the last 2. I'm going to help you set these up so that you can solve them on your own. So we have Trevor is training for a race. He runs 5/10 or 50/100 of a mile every day. So when I read that, he's not running a whole mile, he's running part of a mile. He's going to run the same amount, so that means equal parts, every day for 14 days. How many miles will he run? So he's going to run part of a whole. Part of the whole. Well, that means multiply. So I'm going to write that out. 5/10 of 14, which really means half of 14. So if you know half of 14, then you know 5/10 times 14. So if you need to, you can set it up, more digits on top, multiply it. 5 times 2 is 20, and 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 more makes 7. We have 1 power of 10, so we're going to bump it over, 1 power of 10. So half of 14 is 7, and 5/10 times 14 is 7.0. Okay? And finally, our last one says Hank ran for 1 7/10 miles on Friday and 2 3/10 miles on Saturday and 5 1/5 mile on Sunday. How many miles did he run over the past 3 days? So these are unequal amounts, which means that we're either adding or subtracting, and in this case we're going to be adding all of these together. So what I could do is I could solve it in fraction form, or I could do decimals. Well, decimals is way easier. So we could say 1 7/10 plus 2.3 plus 5 2/10, 5.2. We can get our answer. So you can add those up. So that would be 2/10 plus 3/10 is 5/10 plus 7, which would give me 12/10. That gives me 6, 7, 8, and 9. So I see this as 9 2/10. If I solve this in fraction form, I would have 1 7/10 plus 2 3/10 plus 5, and another name for 1/5 is 2/10. Then I can just add all my tenths. 7 plus 3 is 10, plus 2 more makes 12/10. 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I have to rename that, so that would be 9 2/10, otherwise known as 9 1/5. And 1/5 is equivalent to 9 2/10. Alright, so the only answer that you were unable to get without the video was this answer here. And if you solved this one with me about regrouping, then you should be able to get this one very easily.